Well, good evening. Oh, hang on a sec. There we go. Good evening, IFL Nation, and welcome to tonight's stream. We are once again back in the lab. Unfortunately, not the original plan. Was going to do the stream at my alma mater, Bryant University, but internet connection issues kind of forced things the other way. But in any event, we are here. It is 7 p.m. on the East Coast. And it is time for this week's Wager Wednesday in the Indoor Football League. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy evening to talk some shop about the IFL season as it quickly nears its end. For those of you who are new to the league or happen to be stumbling upon this channel for the first time, I want to warmly welcome you aboard. My name is Alex Schuberth. I am a huge fan of the indoor football game. That is a passion that I've channeled into my current role as a lead IFL contributor for Sports Coast to Coast, which is a Pacific Northwest-based sports forum site, which specializes specifically in the coverage of the Indoor Football League and its 14-member teams. Each week, our staff puts in the work and brings you up-to-date team rosters each week. Game previews, game recaps, breaking news as it develops, along with all sorts of other commentary and hot takes across the league. If you call yourself a fan of the IFL, Sports Coast to Coast is a go-to destination to get your download of all things related to the league. There are present results there. There are past results going as far back as the 2016 season. So it is a valuable resource for any aspiring IFL historians out there. So I have linked the site below in the description if you want to go check that out. There you will also find the written version of my Wager Wednesday piece, which I published out there yesterday morning. So if you're not much of the live stream or video person, you've got the, for lack of a better term, pen and paper copy there at your reading leisure. All right, so we will get right cracking in here. This is the penultimate week of the 2026 IFL season. These past 4 months have simply flown by, and all of a sudden, the playoff form is starting to take shape here. We've eliminated 4 teams so far, and we have 3 more spots left to clinch, 2 in the East and 1 in the West. So let's dive in, get all of that discussion down, and see what the future has in store. So tonight, we are going to recap the 7-game full slate that we had in the IFL last week, the final time this season, actually, that we get all 14 teams in action all at once. What a fantastic week it was. We had playoff spots clinched, home turf advantage clinched. We had a 1-point win sprinkled in there. That was the leadoff game of the week between Orlando and San Antonio. We will go over each of those 7 games in the detail that they deserve. Add all of those up to our season-long stats so far. We have now played 101 games in the season, with 11 in the regular season to go, plus the 7 that we will get in August postseason. So, as we've done every week this series, we'll talk about our results up to date. We'll talk about the population of results from a statistical and trend-oriented lens. Continuing to find new trends to back and to monitor and to see which one of those makes sense to tail. Once we get all of that recapping and reflection set in stone, we'll dive into week 19. We've got 5 games this week, 3 on Saturday and 2 on Sunday. We will talk about each of them and try to cook up a 3-leg parlay of the week, which I'm looking forward to the nature of these games and how they interact with one another, which presents a really unique challenge in trying to make predictions on these games, regardless of kind of your viewpoint entering in. So week 18 had a lot of green. This far and away was our best week on our main game bets of the season. We got it started with a bit of a contrarian pick as the week led off with the Orlando Pirates on the road taking on the San Antonio Gunslingers, a game that both teams really needed to win in order to have their playoff prospects look that much better. In this game, Orlando came as the visiting team. They got an early advantage in this one. But right at the last possession of the first half, opening possession of the second half, San Antonio nabbing a pair of interceptions to swing momentum back in their favor. The Gunslinger offense under Joaquin Collazo having one of their best days of the season, continually finding the spots where the Orlando defense was not. And the Gunslingers and the Pirates ended up trading the lead a bunch of times. We had touchdowns for touchdowns, with only a couple stops by both teams in the fourth quarter, adding some intrigue into this game. We had a Gunslinger would-be touchdown that was fumbled at the goal line, recovered by Orlando. The Pirates were unable to do anything with that drive, though, on a field goal attempt where the snap was bobbled and Josh Gable tried to do a pitchy woo-woo situation, and it could have ended up super disastrous for Orlando. But San Antonio, they got a go-ahead touchdown on a really good pass to, I believe it was Deion McShane, who made the reception and the 2-point conversion to boot. But they left time on the clock for Orlando to come up with a drive to get that lead back. And wouldn't you know it, Paxton DeLaurent finds Puka Williams on a check down screen pass. Williams takes it the distance for a touchdown. About 10 seconds left, 20 seconds left at that juncture. Pirates up by 1. San Antonio on their final drive thought that they had another deep touchdown. Deion Cook nearly hauling it in off his thigh, essentially, or the calf. But the officials deemed that process of the catch was not completed. They actually upheld that ruling after a lengthy review, and the Gunslingers could not move the ball on second, third, or fourth down of that drive. So Orlando, by the very, very skin of their teeth, defeat the San Antonio Gunslingers for the first time in franchise history by a final score of 55-54. So Orlando improving to a record of 9-6, which put them at fourth place in the Eastern Conference for the time being, whereas San Antonio dropping to 4-10, and now they are in do or die mode the rest of the way. They will need to win out, and they're going to need some help, which we will detail here in just a little bit. So that game led us off, and at 6 o'clock, we opened up the Casey Center for a matchup between the hosting Iowa Barnstormers and the Green Bay Blizzard, with Liam Thompson, Drayshawn Hudson, and the Blizzard looking to potentially clinch the number 1 overall seed in the Eastern Conference for the second time in 3 seasons. And this game was no nonsense for the Blizzard. They scored touchdowns on each of their 5 offensive drives. Andrew Mevis added a pair of deuces as well as part of that sequence. And the Blizzard defense, they kept on their hot form. They hounded new Iowa starting quarterback Aaron Aiken throughout the majority of the contest. And while there was some intrigue with the change in signal caller early, the Blizzard emphatically stomped that out from basically halftime onwards. They only allowed 7 points in the second half altogether. And the blowout happened. We got to the fourth quarter, and Cole Stenstrom ended up keeping himself fresh with some time in the fourth quarter, leading a couple of scoring drives of his own. And once we had played the full 60 minutes out in Iowa, Green Bay at 13-2 cements their spot atop the Eastern Conference with a 65-21 victory, nearly double the margin of victory that the point spread required. So Green Bay up to 13-2, Iowa down to 1-13, looking to potentially do better than their 1-15 record from a season ago. Although we'll have to see how that goes for Andre Coles and the rest of the coaching staff there. At Tulsa, we had the Oilers hosting the Jacksonville Sharks, a big game as far as the Eastern playoff picture goes. The Oilers coming in, riding a 6-game winning streak, whereas the Sharks had been losers of each of their last 3. And true to that form, it was the Tulsa Oilers who got off to a much better start. They kept the pressure on offense throughout the entire game, but especially early on, with TJ Edwards linking up with Jerminic Smith early and often. Smith wound up with 3 touchdown receptions total, actually, which ended up setting a new franchise mark for most career touchdowns, and I believe most touchdown receptions in a single season by a player. So outstanding day for an outstanding player who may suddenly find himself as a front runner for Offensive Player of the Year when all is said and done. But the story of the Oilers offense dominating kept the theme going throughout the Sharks losing streak of the defense just could not get the stop that they needed until it was too late. They did finally get a stand, but it was on a drive when Draylon Ellis took over, when the Oilers were ahead by 16, and the Oilers were kind of playing it safe at that point. But Jacksonville fell behind by as many as 20. They were able to cut it down to 8, but an onside kick attempt was recovered by TJ Davis of the Oilers, and that gave Tulsa a 57-49 win over the Jacksonville Sharks. So the two teams have split the season series. They are both 9-5. At present, the Sharks hold the tiebreaker for that potential home playoff game in the first round by virtue of superior strength of schedule. So that's going to be a fascinating race to see how that turns out in the end. In Quad City, this was also a do-or-die contest at the time of the kickoff, with the Steam Wheelers hosting the Fishers Freight, with Fishers knowing that Orlando had won earlier in the day. That gave Fishers the green light that they needed to win to keep their playoff hopes alive. And though there were many notable performers in that game for the visiting Freight, how about Callum Sutherland booting through 4 deuces, making all of his field goal attempt or all of his extra point attempts, and booting through a 54-yard field goal, which is his career high, and from my count, also the longest field goal made across the entire league this season. So don't know how exactly Sutherland didn't get Special Teams Player of the Week as a result of that, but to each their own, I guess. It was those little 2 points here, 3 points there that really truly added up in this game. And as it turned out, Fishers needed every bit of it in the fourth quarter. They were ahead by 6 points. They had just got stopped at the goal line trying to increase their lead. Quad City, with about 7 minutes left in the game, had a very real chance to get a touchdown themselves and potentially get back in the lead and make this thing super interesting. Unfortunately for the Steam Wheelers, there was a scramble play involving Daquan Neal. He just lost grasp of the football right before being down by contact. The recovery was made by, I believe it was Devin Williams of the Freight. The two teams got some pretty quick touchdowns from that point onwards. That kind of put our under bet in a little bit of jeopardy. A Josiah King kick return for a touchdown at the 1-minute warning really put this up against the ringer. But on Quad City's final drive, which was the determining factor of this bet, Neal had a pass tipped and intercepted, and that basically ended the game from there. Fishers did need to convert a short 4th down rush in order to maintain possession of the ball to salt the rest of the game clock, but Felix Harper was able to get it. Nice 3-yard rush, second effort play. So the Freight complete the 2-game sweep of the Steam Wheelers, this one by a final score of 49-35. So at 8-7, 5th place in the conference, it is very much shaping up like Week 20's game between Orlando and the Freight at Fisher's Event Center is going to be a quasi playoff game, basically a play in to get to the playoffs. Quad City, even if they had won this game, they would have been eliminated either way with Orlando and Tulsa winning, but obviously losing never helps that cause. So the Steamwheelers actually miss the playoffs. They are eliminated in the regular season for the first time since 2019. Saturday's final game saw the Tucson Sugar Skulls head to Glendale. Nice little trip on north of the state there to take on the Arizona Rattlers. This game, very, very interesting to start. The defenses really ruled the day. I believe both units ended up getting a takeaway over the other. There were some drives led to field goals, some led to field goal attempts. And through it all, we were in the third quarter. Tucson gets a field goal to take a 2-point lead. And then Arizona fumbling, giving the Sugar Skulls the ball back. Tucson with the opportunity to really put some serious fuel in the upset bid. But a Jerome Johnson pass right around midfield, intercepted by Yasin McKee, who won last week's Defensive Player of the Week award. He houses it for a pick six, totally changed the complexion of the ball game. Tucson's offense really wasn't able to recalibrate from that point onward. In fact, it was a sack early in the fourth quarter of Jerome Johnson that resulted in a safety and also forced Jerome Johnson to exit from the game with what had apparently been ruled as an injury, though it's not feared to be super serious according to reports. But yeah, once Johnson left the game and they had to revert to one of their rookies to take snaps the rest of the way, it was pretty much all academic at that point. The Rattlers may not have been the cleanest game that they've ever played, but it still counts as a win nonetheless. It's another double-digit winning season in Arizona for the Rattlers, who win against Tucson 41-25, as the Rattlers are now 10-5, third place in the Western Conference. They are one game behind Vegas, but the Nighthawks do own that tiebreaker there, thanks to their 2-game season series sweep from earlier this year. As for the Sugar Skulls, they dropped to 6-8, but they are still one win away or one San Antonio loss away from setting themselves up as that pesky number 4 seed in the West. On Sunday, we had a doubleheader beginning with a battle of teams at the bottom of the standings out west. The New Mexico Chupacabras and Northern Arizona Wranglers battling out for the third and final time of the season. This game just really, if it proved one thing, it's that New Mexico was probably the most snake-bitten team in the league this year. They went out and signed 2 different quarterbacks to suit up for this game. It was Guillermo Serrano and Blake Bartz, the former of which ended up drawing the start. But after an apparent lower body injury to Serrano, Blake Bartz had to come in the game. And then on a play in the fourth quarter, Bartz gets stinged up to where the Chupacabras had no other choice but to essentially line up from the Wildcat with LaJames White for the vast majority of the game. It's something that they've done quite a bit of this year, especially in some more of those gadget and situational football type of scenarios. But yeah, it was just not pretty. They were able to get some juice on offense, thanks mostly to a 3-touchdown performance from LaJames White. But they really didn't have a shot in this one with the way that the defense got absolutely gouged. Anthony Garrett, 6 touchdowns through the air, 1 on the ground. And by combination of desperation and trying to get as creative as they could with the playbook, New Mexico ends up tossing 3 interceptions in the fourth quarter alone, all of them actually to Daiwan Griffin, who took 2 of those and translated them immediately into touchdowns by way of the pick 6. So in a game that had the over-under set at 79.5, Northern Arizona cracks the 70 mark for the second time this season, to the tune of a 71-33 win over the New Mexico Chupacabras. So for Northern Arizona, it's suddenly a 2-game winning streak, feeling at least a little bit positive about some of the good pieces that have emerged from that roster in the late stages. New Mexico, meanwhile, drops to a record of 2-13, with a lot more questions to answer surrounding what's going on with that franchise. Our final game of the week, a bona fide matchup between the San Diego Strike Force and the Vegas Nighthawks, the second meeting of the regular season between these two teams. The early goings of this one indicated, hey, Vegas might have this game at least the upper hand. They score the first 13 points of the contest, but San Diego, being the diligent team that they've been throughout the season, they responded in a big way. They amped up the physicality as much as the rule book would allow them to. And they wind up staging from, I believe it was late in the first quarter to about midway through the third quarter, a 35-7 run that turned a 13-point deficit into a 15-point advantage. Vegas did trim into that a little bit with an interception late in the third quarter. They ended up getting as close as 3 points, I believe it was. But Nate Davis and Shane Hooks and the rest of that Strike Force offense, they pretty much got the job done from there. They continued to put up points on the board, made Vegas chase the rest of the way. And through some pretty good endgame management, San Diego increasing their lead with the field goal to put up their lead to 14 with 15 seconds remaining. Vegas couldn't add anything after that. The clock ran out on them. So the final score of this one, San Diego waltzing into Vegas and upsetting the Nighthawks 52-38. So San Diego, with a 11-3 record, they are now the number one seed in the Western Conference, one win away from clinching that spot permanently for the upcoming playoff run. Vegas, meanwhile, as we said before, they are 11-4, and they need San Diego to lose out in order to have any shot of reclaiming that number one seed. So that was the summary of an exhilarating Week 18 in the league. As you can see, we won 6 of our wagers, the most out of any week so far this season. We nailed a couple of under bets, which nearly doubled our win count on that bet type. But all of a sudden, our overall record looks relatively respectable compared to where it's been throughout the season. 50 wins, 51 losses. Very real shot that we put this thing above 500 before the regular season comes to a close. Still have quite a bit of work to do with translating some of those net loss numbers into something a bit more manageable. But the seeds have been planted for that late season surge. The 3-leg parlay of the week. Stop me if you've heard this before. We lost on the last leg. Ironically enough, for the second straight week, it was the game involving the Arizona Rattlers that was our undoing. Granted, we did have a little bit of bad luck with the second half in that one with Jerome Johnson's injury, but even at that point, it still would have taken a frenzy in the fourth quarter to make that a little bit more manageable. But yeah, still no less heartbreaking than it has been in this past 5-week sequence here. Just whatever it is between the Wranglers games and the Rattlers games have just destroyed us in our attempt for a fourth parlay win. But again, we're right there. We're scratching the surface. Eventually, that luck has to turn around if we're consistently getting these first 2 legs going, getting the seat at the table, proverbially speaking. So I'm confident that we do make that mark before we wrap up the season. But while we did not hit this parlay in particular, we did hit this one. with the terrific triumvirate winning for the fourth time this season, a plus 513 payout. Thanks to the expertise from Trey from Off the Wall and Cody from In the Alley. The collaboration there results in another fantastic winner. So, love to see it. Stay tuned for what we believe is the long overdue back-to-back sequence. Very excited to see what you guys think of that one. But our year-to-date net gain and loss here in chart form, we got that spike. It took a while, but we did get that spike that we've been looking for, basically mirroring what we had in week 6, which was another, I believe, 5-1 or 5-2 type of week for us. So the climb back up to net zero, not impossible, but not necessarily banking on it. But if we go 1-0 on each and every one of our games, who knows? Anything can happen, and that's got to be the approach. All right, the full population of games. We have reached 101 games played, as we have said before. Where do the advantages lie? We've talked in the majority of the season about the home team being extremely efficient in terms of at least win rate, if not overall profitability. As home teams on the spread, near 65% on the conversion rate there. Favorites or home teams on the money line, still very strong, 62%. On the spread, the favorites have a pretty notable advantage. I wouldn't call it statistically significant per se, but it's still a pretty notable difference there. 54 and 47. The same goes for overs, cashing 54 out of the 101 times. The year of chalk continues pretty emphatically here, with favorites still winning at a more than 72% rate. But yeah, again, if you're just coming in for the first time, you're unsure of where the value lies, look no further than the home teams, because they have been an absolute unit, an absolute wagon throughout the balance of this season. All right, team by team trends. Where does everybody stand with just a couple weeks left to play in the season? And in some cases, these teams only have one game remaining. Against the spread, we see most of our teams that are going to be competing in the playoffs. We've got Green Bay and Orlando leading the way at 10-5, Vegas and Arizona at 9-6, San Diego and Tulsa at 9-5 against the spread. So, as the saying goes, the good teams win, the great teams cover. I know I have that shirt kicking around somewhere, but I don't have any idea where I put it. But be that as it may, some of the over-under bets here. Orlando still leading the way there with an 11-4 record. Their games averaging nearly 96 per game. Tulsa 10-4 to the over, and that is off the heels of a currently ongoing 7-game over streak, as their games have now suddenly averaged near 90 points a game. League average has hovered somewhere around the 86, 87 mark over the course of this season as we have progressed on. But yeah, we've got a couple other strong teams there, San Diego, Vegas, and Green Bay, notable. And on the flip side, teams like Arizona, Tucson, and Quad City have been very good to those who like to play what's called the dark side of the unders. Lastly, before we move on, the moneyline ROI profitability, Tucson still clearing away the front runner there, although a lot of that was born from their two biggest wins as far as payout potential, with their upset at Vegas cashing at plus 1,600, and then the following week they take down Arizona as plus 600 underdogs. So you could make the case the more reliable team of the two in terms of generating respectable profit. San Diego, 11-3 on the season, ROI 59%, and a decent helping of those wins as underdogs. So if we get to the postseason and they wind up as an underdog in one of their games, probably the Western Conference Final at this point. That's definitely something worthwhile to take a look at. All right. What are our active streaks that we have our eyes on as we enter week 19? We've got Arizona with the best ATS streak in the league right now, having covered in each of the last 3 games. On the flip side, New Mexico, amidst their stumble to the finish, have failed to cover in each of the last 3. But Jacksonville, oddly enough, mired in a 4-game losing streak where they have not covered in any one of those games. We had talked about Tulsa's 7-0 over streak earlier, so that is still ongoing. And wouldn't you know it, it is a perfect foil to their opponent, Quad City, who has got a 4-0 under record in each of their last 4 games. The other 2 biggest trends to the over, surprisingly, the San Antonio Gunslingers, along with the Jacksonville Sharks, who have seen their games mainly follow the template of Jacksonville's got a really strong offense, but the defense has been exploitable in that sequence. So is that a trend that we could look to have continue in really throughout each of these teams' upcoming games? Because I believe each of these will be put to the test either Saturday or Sunday. Our yearly results by team so far. That New Mexico and Northern Arizona over-under. I gave all the signs to fade it, so congratulations if you did. But if not, I'm afraid to report that we still are winless in both of those categories. And that loss in that game means that New Mexico will again be a team falling short of our 7-win per team preseason milestone. So a little bit of a step backwards from where we were able to get this graph last season, where we got 13 of the 14 teams to push through. But this week, we turn our attention to the games involving the Strike Force and the Tulsa Oilers, both of whom we have gone 5-9 on their games so far this season. So another loss on either of those games would put those out of contention as well. So again, at this point, our revised goal, we get 12 of these 14 teams to that 7-win mark. And hopefully, eventually, get that New Mexico and or Northern Arizona win if the situation is right on the over-under. All right. Time for our weekly disclaimer section here. The lines and odds that we're going to use today are going to come from DraftKings Sportsbook. And this series is purely rooted, even though it's got that betting undertone to it. This is for curiosity, entertainment, and fun. Mainly me as a math nerd trying to do a deep number dive to try to find value. It's not meant to be construed as betting advice or a means with which to make money. We've seen very, very often that there's no such thing as a guarantee or a lock when it comes to trying your luck with sports. If you do play, please do so legally. You must be 21 years of age or older to play in most jurisdictions. And if you would like to play along with my bets or completely fade them entirely, you're more than welcome to do so, but please practice safe gaming habits if you decide to do that. That includes setting a budget in terms of both your time and your money. Risk only what you can afford to lose. And if you feel like you or a loved one is maybe having an issue with problem gaming, don't be afraid to consult resources either online or issued by your state to provide assistance or clarity within the whole context of gambling. Responsibleplay.org is one example. Haveagameplan.org is another. That's listed at the bottom there. But yeah, it's very, very important if you're feeling that way to stay upfront and honest about it. And if that's something that you do believe is creeping in, know that you're not alone. You have support, and help is out there for you to get back on the straight and narrow. With all that said, we've got a fantastic 5 here on the big board. It is time to venture in and predict the slate of games this week. We will start things off with a Saturday kickoff at 7 p.m. Eastern. This one is between the Iowa Barnstormers and the Jacksonville Sharks. Iowa entering with one win, and they come in as 21.5-point road underdogs, despite Jacksonville's 4-game losing streak. The over-under is set at 84.5. The money line, if you like Iowa for the upset, plus 800, pretty tantalizing there. If you like Jacksonville, but you don't like the minus 21.5, you're going to have to pay a pretty hefty price on a Sharks outright win. Minus 1350. Looking specifically at the Barnstormers first, as we've said before, unfortunately for them, another lost season. Another failure to make the playoffs where they haven't been since the 2022 season. And through these next couple games prior to the end, all that head coach Andre Coles can really do is try to identify any potential building blocks to look to moving forward.